I need some small HDMI to see adapters.
Are we turning on the live stream? People asking me.
It's coming up right now.
Okay.
It's on now. Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Right.
Good.
First
John,
things first.
I obviously didn't tell you. You didn't have to be here tonight. Just so you know.
Never decide.
I would have let you, I mean, you had a pass for more than one reason.
I did my phone on my desk.
Nice.
Fix that.
You want to
Yeah. All discombobulated.
Okay, we're recording now.
All right, you guys ready? So we'll call the meeting to order at 4:02. Start with a roll call.
Sheena Martinez, District 1.
Paul Carey, District 2.
Philip King, District 3.
Todd Shearhart, District 4.
Herb Dyer, District 5.
Darren Schroeder, Mayor. So all are in attendance. Next item is citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments? Next item is discussion on proposed FY 2022 General Fund, Utility Fund, and Special Funds.
Okay. Deb. It's not that, speaking of that work order, so it's just doing this?
Can you expedite that work order?
Yeah, can you expedite? We have a backup, but why is it doing that?
It's not mine.
It should have power.
These are bright.
I can try the other one.
Well, he's going to get it on in a minute, but
Well, we turned it off the other day for a meeting. It was better. I mean, yeah.
oh, really? Okay.
It does, you see a lot better with the lights off or
The
with the dark.
glare from the window sometimes reflects.
I just know that we tried to use a pointer on it yesterday. Couldn't.
That point,
No, no.
what's that? Okay.
Speaking of which, did
Pointer?
you keep that pointer? Did you keep that?
Try this one.
Where's the pointer? Everybody?
Pointer don't work.
There
you go.
I don't think it'll work
I lent
on
mine
TV.
to,
The pointer?
that's all right, I don't need it. I was just
Oh,
wondering where
really?
the one I had went, so.
It
It's
might-
something about TVs.
It might reflect the in your eye.
Where the cat's at?
That's a white light.
Yeah, that's not going to work up there. Oh.
Don't look at the light. Right now.
Yeah, it doesn't work on the screen at all. You can't see it on the screen. It's amazing. It just absorbs light. Which makes our pointers rather useless.
Do you spit Watson?
Our pointers have become useless. Unless we want to play with people in the
They're
audience.
antiques. Just say.
Antiques, yes. They've become vintage. Mine disappeared yesterday, which is just fine.
I know I need this. I'm gonna watch it, right?
Because I lent it to Darren. I lent it
sure,
to
blame
Larry.
Darren, yeah,
Larry,
sure.
and Larry gave it to Darren, and that was the end of it, but that's right.
I left it over there.
Left it over
Because it
there.
didn't work.
Yeah.
Did you have a tree fall down in front of your house?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
no.
big mesquite.
Oh, no.
It was amazing, though. It fell down the way it fell, because I don't know if you know this, my front fence, those are actually the old floor joists from the Catholic Church when it had a wooden floor. And
I
so
did not know that, but okay.
pretty much irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And I had one that had been broken by a deer, and that's
Big deer.
where the
Fast
tree
deer.
fell. It only
Hit
hit
that
that
one
one,
board.
missed
Nice.
everything else.
So,
There we're up.
so
And.
Nice.
And.
I want to go
So,
In the middle of the meeting.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're waiting for item 3 to get going, or
Oh.
item 4 to get going.
And to the people that are watching online, I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties, so we're just trying to buy a little bit of time here.
Technology, you gotta love to hate it sometimes.
So, today is my wife and my 41st anniversary. And I
Happy
took her to lunch.
anniversary.
Congratulations.
Happy anniversary.
to move this over there.
So since last year was our 40th, but
Couldn't do anything really.
July last year, yeah.
She's put up with you for a long
Put up with
time.
it for a real, way too long.
Yeah, you're messing me up.
We have big,
I got you beat by a year.
Do you?
If I do that.
He's put up with you for that long, too. Oh, no.
Wait, no.
what year were you married, Todd?
He hadn't known me that long. 79.
77.
77.
Okay, we got your beat. We were married
Yeah, you
in
can.
76.
Wow.
Wow.
January 3rd.
For
I don't remember how long ago it was. January 3rd, 76.
Your wife's still watching the meeting.
77.
No, she knows
Really?
my
That's
inadequacies.
awesome.
Inadequacies, as in math? Come on.
Joe-
Math isn't
I
inadequate.
graduated.
Joe does the same thing, so.
You broke it.
Oh, boy, I shouldn't
It
have
was
said
the day
that.
following, because the thing in the papers that day was the day of Entebbe. So that was it happened on January 2nd. We got married January 3rd.
So I can also just do.
That's right, if you ask
Do you-
Joe
do
about
you have it on
he
extend
goes,
screen?
3 disasters happened on our
There you
anniversary.
go.
Not sure what we just did.
Hopefully one of them was the marriage.
No.
Okay.
Oh, no. Think of it, it's Joe.
All right, we'll see.
We had Waco happen the year before we got married.
Okay.
Then we got married,
No.
and then the Oklahoma City bombing happened.
Same day. Sean.
19
You picked a really good
April.
day.
Is
Yeah.
the,
And we were in Alaska, so many.
You picked an excellent
I
day.
tell you.
And
You turned this one off.
Before we
Yeah,
leave,
this one went.
Well, that one wasn't on at all.
Oh, you turned this one off and back on.
it's got a, it's
okay, we're up here.
All
You're
right.
up there.
Click them again.
Yay!
Ta-da!
All right, thank you for your patience. We're now gonna have a bunch of workshops.
We didn't have much choice, did we?
No, but I appreciate your patience.
Nonetheless.
Yeah, noticed it. So we're here at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday to talk about budget workshop. This is the third one we've had. We're getting closer. Something really important happened basically Monday morning. It should have happened on Friday, but we're gonna go there. But Monday morning, we got our certified tax roll. So Leroy and I have been feverishly working with the certified roll and the Melissa Lutz at the tax office.
Lutz,
Lutz?
Lutz.
Say it right.
That's what I said.
No, you said it right if you're in Honda.
Right.
Yeah.
Lutz or Lutz, depending on where you are.
It's
That's how
halfway
they
between.
say it in
All right.
Honda.
I
But
don't know
in
that.
Castroville, you say Lutz. Lutz and Honda.
Lutz. Lutz. Okay. I'll put a little draw on it.
I'm just
Anyway.
messing with you.
With Melissa's excellent help, she's been fantastic, just trying to make sure that we're on the same board, same place. So I'm going to show you what those are. We may not get those to those during the budget workshop, in part because we started late, in part because I don't know how much time we're going to spend talking about service level adjustments and that kind of thing. So I purposely put them at the very end of the slide deck so that if we run out of time, when we go to our 5 o'clock meeting, which is our regular council meeting, we're actually noticed to talk about the tax rate, and we can talk about them at that time. So just know, I don't know if it's the best for last or how we want to categorize that, but there certainly is more to come. So
We shall see.
what we will do, why can't I? Nope. You still have it on your screen?
Nope.
No. Why did it go away?
Looks like you have a short.
Loose wire.
No, all I did was hit something on my keyboard.
Loose screw.
I just said I want to advance the screen.
Them keyboards are sensitive.
Are you running in a slideshow now? Or you put it on
Yeah,
slideshow?
no, I had it on slideshow, so I was trying to hit.
So anyway, before we even moved out here, a big oak tree, red oak tree, right next to that historic house,
I wonder if it just
big branch came off this big, they heard it blocks away. Came down, missed the
I
house,
know that we,
kind of fell in between the house and it all right under the fence, but the branches, they went all the way
so
across.
you want to get the extension cord?
So the city can't even cut it, it's a red oak, so the city cut the branches so they could reopen up Florida Street. We were living in San Antonio. So then we had to come out here and spend days cleaning up that center, but the branches were this big.
Plugging right. I'm powering it off the PC, and before we had it powered.
That's right, police officer stopped next day and handed me boulders, tree cutting guy, boulders, I think it was. Here, call him, he'll help you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know him.
I
I
think
have
it's just
found
like
a
a
different company out of Somerset called Tree Climbers, and we had a
Was
tree
your,
in the backyard that, it was a very big one, one of my neighbors' line.
This is supposed to
It's
go
lit
white.
From
I can see
15
that.
feet high to about 3 feet off the ground, and it was gonna come down to the ground.
I don't see it.
And these guys literally climbed up in that tree on harnesses and safety equipment, and started dropping pieces that were small enough not to do any damage, and climbed back down, just worked their way back down. Did a fantastic job, loaded everything up, hauled it off. And I I've used them 3 or 4 times now.
Who's that?
I'll be happy to. Tree climbers.
No, but I mean, the name of the folks?
That's
Tree
their-
climbers.
that's
Oh,
their-
that's their name?
Out of Somerset.
Creative, huh?
I'll be happy to share their number. We've had them back out on the property probably 4 times.
I'll be doing.
Yeah, and they show up when they say they'll show up, and they clean up after themselves before they leave, so.
Okay.
Can't knock it. I just said that over the entire network.
Yeah, you have a
All right.
password.
So I'm going to talk you through the slides, and then hopefully we'll get this working in the meantime. I think part of this is just a power source. I'm trying to use the PC as a power source. And when we tried this on at the first meeting, which was I think last meeting, we had it powered. So we'll try something different.
I've got an
Don't worry about
extension
that.
cord.
Okay.
I don't have a-
So, just to talk high level, how did we develop this budget? Again, it's repetition of some of the things we talked about before, but the first kind of assumption for me was we don't want to adopt something where we have to use fund balance. So the revenue, the expenditures should not exceed revenues. We need to manage to that. And of course, you saw through the budget process, our department heads did a lot of trimming to kind of cut back their costs. And some of that was also for another major goal. So I wanted to control operations and maintenance, and part of that was outsourcing HR and payroll, so we all took that step. That's a big piece in helping this budget to work, is being able to have predictable costs that are less than what we've having to spend before. They aren't tied to personnel and other things that are subject to inflation, as Mr. Dyer and I were talking about the other day. The other was to kind of streamline data input and customer service. Now, some of that we're going to talk about tonight. We've been looking into, staff has been evaluating for, 8 months now, I guess, almost. I mean, I haven't been here that long. Yeah, 7 months, 6 months, almost since we got here. We started talking about looking at what are we doing from a software perspective? How can we streamline this? How can you improve the customer experience to City of Castroville first and foremost? But then also how can we make that more what's the term? Not streamline. Streamline is not the word I was thinking of, but efficient. Are you having issues, Phil? Is that
No,
still glaring?
actually,
You're
I
doing
was
that.
seeing who was in the audience. I couldn't see because of the glare. I'm okay.
It's like we have a witness protection program. Over
Yeah.
there. It's kind of nice.
It's a lineup.
We'll disguise their voices in a minute. Yeah, there was a famous quote that I meant to share with y'all during our retreat, and I haven't found a good time to share it, but I'll go ahead and share it now. Benjamin Franklin is attributed to saying, and I'm not positive he did, but he said, trouble came knocking at the door, and hearing laughter from within, hurried on his way. And I don't know what made him say that. I don't know what the context for him saying that, but I like the quote simply because sometimes we take things really, really seriously, and it's very easy to put on a frowny face and go through life that way because we've all got a lot of worries and concerns, and some of them are grave and dire indeed. But life is just too short not to be happy, and so I kind of like that quote. The next issue is to provide policymakers, you all, with important data and information, and then position the city for capital investment. So that was a big piece of this. What can we do with the general fund, specifically for the general fund's ability to issue debt? What can we do there? I've got it on duplicate, just so you know. Instead of extend, but it should still work. There we go. So you think powering it? We'll just see how this works. So this is, look, we made it to the very first slide. Oh! Leroy, will you step outside and grab there's a USB that my wife has through that door. That door right there outside.
Thank you, Leroy.
Leroy's gonna come get it from us. He's coming out now. Yep, up front, out that door, he's putting it out. Okay.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yes, Paul and I were trading information. So, we talked about, okay, this is what we gave, 5 years of history. Again, you've seen this all before several times. We then asked the department heads to give us feedback. What I want to advance. Oh, it's advancing here, but not up there. That's interesting. Oh, because we lost it. Son of a-
That's all.
Best laid plans.
It's back again.
Yeah, back again.
Well, they do
So we sent this to them. We asked them for the feedback. They gave it to us. Still, man, he does not like us. We're gonna try the other one here in a minute.
Well, we gotta cook that medication before I leave here.
Right? Was that the liquid kind, Phil?
I'll find the prescription, though.
Yeah, you should've
Medicinal
shared.
purposes.
Oh, my,
Medicinal.
yeah, this whole thing is strictly.
Yeah. We might have to go to the projector, y'all, if this doesn't, if this keeps up. This is really a
Yeah.
problem.
You need to use your pointers.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Well,
need my
Paul can-
pointer back.
I'm gonna grab me, where's your pen on? Let's try this. See if this works. We do have two.
It's a 1 hour meeting, that's chunk
Skip over the review and just dive
Back
into
to
the meat
smoke
and potatoes,
signals.
that way we're on time.
Can I ask Pat Connors a question since we're waiting? What were we gonna ask Paul Carey related to surveys?
Uh-oh.
Had something to do with historic? Oh,
What about crossing?
of course, the cross is
Correct.
on private
No, it's
property.
not.
But the streets haven't been platted up there.
Yes, they,
Why would they have?
yeah, along with all the others in the city.
Okay, because I was told they weren't platted. But you're for sure
No,
they
I've
are
got a copy,
platted.
I've got a copy of the plat, it goes from the river to the river.
I'm wrong, he's right.
Why?
paper streets.
Whether or
They're
not
paper
it-
streets.
Yeah, but no, it was, Marie Gillis was the one who was having been platted because they haven't been required to the city yet.
Well,
I don't know why this
there's a
wouldn't
state,
advance,
law
whether or not
that
that's trying to
allows
conflict.
communities to disregard unexecuted plats after
Why
they've
is it-
been about 50 years old. So if after 50 years you haven't built it, it's no longer
There we go.
enforceable in terms of replatting requirements. They could just plat it fresh and not have to do a vacate, but
Nobody's done it yet, so.
And no, the cross is right, almost in the middle of Lafayette Street. That I have,
Any signatures?
I had heard years ago something's wearing out that property.
Phil's got,
Well, you know, it's Myers, of course, he's passed away, and he's gone to his wife, but will eventually go to one of the kids. But
Should we go ahead and just jump over to the,
Well, maybe.
technically it is.
Oh, they're already good.
All right.
So
Yeah, see if you can get that set up.
Said something.
That'd be great. This is weird.
you're off? No, he's off.
If it comes up, I'll let you know. Got your back.
So I heard Sheena talking in the background. Why don't we skip to what the changes are? Is that what you said?
Skip to the meat and potatoes,
Yeah,
that's the way we stay on
Because I
time.
can't get the screen working. But all of this is the same. We have had some minor changes in the general fund. It's a total amount of about $66,000 to the general fund, and that is ADP, $29,000. It's not, again, when we proposed ADP, it would be a net zero effect on the budget. Well, we took out the expense, we didn't add it. We took out the offsetting expense, we didn't add the ADP expense back, so that's what that is. It's still a net neutral movement if you want to look at it that way. But to the general fund, that's $29,000, and then I increased longevity to, just let me know when it's on. Have you hit the power button to turn it on? Gotta do that. I've increased the longevity to $100 even per year of service. Our prior service amount was some weird calculation, and we maxed it out pretty low. I've taken it to 25 years. The cost of doing that is $11,000 to the general fund. This goes back to just trying to prevent turnover and encourage people to stick around. So it's a very low cost benefit you can provide employees, but it communicates to them, hey, you're valuable, we want you to be here. And the biggest thing is it makes it a lot easier for them to figure up in their head, because it's not some weird number. It's $100 even. If you've been here a year, depending on the anniversary date that gets adopted, it'll be sometime in November. If you've been a year in November, you'll get $100. 2 years, $200. 3 years, $300. So it's just a way of calculating that.
This goes into a retirement fund, or this is just a?
No, this is just longevity. So that our incentive, our longevity incentive was really, I didn't realize how low it was until we started looking at the budget between these meetings, until I dug into that piece of it. I can't remember why.
Because I had asked what the benefits were if we were going to improve.
I wish that was the reason I was doing it, Sheena, but it wasn't honest. It was something that
Blame
Leroy and I,
Sheena, you know,
Leroy and I,
But
it
you
was
can
a
have credit for it.
yeah, it was a conversation Leroy and I were having offline about something, and I was like, wait, what is your longevity? And he told me, I was like, no, we're not doing that. That doesn't make any sense. We need
have a
to,
perfect attendance incentive at school.
you're right. So we don't do that, but anyway, it's just, I've done this in other places where I've served, and it's always, one, of course, employees always
Yes.
like to see it, but.
Is this what is it? Is this a cash payment to them? or-
Yeah, so we already do it now, and we already do this type of a longevity. It's just not, it's not $100 even, and.
So if someone is here 10 years, once a year, they get a $1,000 check, next year, or I don't understand.
That's correct.
longevity.
The next year, they get $1,100. The next year, they get $1,200, just for being a loyal employee that's been here that long.
And this is paid when?
It would be paid once a year in November. And I timed that purposely because around Christmas, you know, it's not.
Christmas bonus.
We don't give bonuses.
Yeah.
The cities don't give bonuses, but this is a longevity payment. And it's just a way to make employees feel appreciated at that time of year.
And I don't have anything against, I just had never heard
Yeah,
of this
yeah.
program. And what are we doing now?
Do you remember the amount?
So the
$3
max we
a
get
month.
now is about $504 for the entire year. That's something that has over 10 years of being here. So this is a big increase, but maybe something like this. So
So they don't get anything for 10 years, and then they get $5?
right
No,
now,
no.
that's the max that we can get now currently. It's about $3 a month that it calculates. You can take that times 12 and it calculates.
$36?
Yeah.
Yeah.
$36?
It's
Right.
very low, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
first came here
Well,
the
that was-
first year, I got like $15.
Yeah.
Because I've been here like 6 months.
That was kind of my point. Sheena. That was my reaction. I was like,
Yeah, wow.
what? No, we're changing that. So I hadn't run it by you, but I mean, just, it's a,
No, that's,
it's the
That's
least we can do
wrong.
kind
No,
of
that's a good move.
If we want
Yeah.
to improve longevity and give people one more
Retain.
reason. It's not the
Absolutely.
reason, frankly, people are going to leave for $100, right? But,
But it's showing our appreciation for the
right,
hard work that they're
right,
doing.
it's just
and their
one more thing.
dedication
And you
to
know,
this.
I mean, Microsoft does all kinds of things for their employees, I'm sure.
Well, sure.
Most private sectors do. And public sectors, we're limited in what we can do, but this is one of the things we can. I can plug this, can I plug this in now? Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was gonna.
It's still looking for you. Ah, hello.
Hey! All right, back to the old stuff.
Good old technology.
All right.
Okay, tear them TVs down, put them in my car.
No. Put it in my car.
I'll take it and you take the other.
Going to Hunt Black?
So there's the retirement matching, Phil. Remember, I think I told you, I mean, like, your 3% value, the 3% cost of living adjustment that you all discussed and approved was $52,000. And I told you, you know, to make a 2% contribution, it'd be about half that, and it is. It's about $26,000.
So after 25 years, I don't get nothing?
Retired by the.
No, we encourage you to think about your options.
So
There you go.
it maxes out
Terrible.
at $2,500?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the.
And the $11,000 is the increase from what we are paying.
That's correct. So the net impact to this year's budget would be $11,000, just based on what we have in, you know, the number of employees we have, that kind of thing.
So all told, but all told, it's like, because you're saying this is about triples, does that mean that right now, with, what's that total we're paying, 15,000 or 20,000? In other words, what's the total longevity payment? This is just the
Correct.
increase.
Oh, yeah, well, it's a lot less than that, because this would be, we're increasing it by,
200%.
what's that?
About 200%.
Yeah, more
So
than,
it'd be
yeah,
about
yeah, about
$15,000.
200%. So,
Which is, that's only 15 people at $100.
we don't have a lot of people been here a real long time. I didn't run this by Deborah, but Deborah will love this. In November, she'll love it. She'll kiss each one of you, maybe. I don't know, but.
Is that before taxes or after?
Well, so what we've done, what I've done in the past is we have, we've made that we have not withheld taxes and sent out a letter and saying, hey, this doesn't, because people don't like getting checks that, yeah, we try to give them the whole amount, say, this is it. We don't pay the taxes for them, But that's another thing we can have to work through ADP to do, but that's what we've done in the past. We just give them the full amount, because that way, again, it's easy for them to calculate in their head. $1,400, that's what it should say, right? And they get the check and it's $1,400 and they're very, very happy. But if it's like something less than that and Uncle Sam takes their 2 cents, we get calls. Yes, sir.
It don't matter what their attendance is, they're still gonna get it.
Yeah, we don't have an attendance policy. That, frankly, I mean, if we have issues, those types of issues, we're already talking about other things. If people aren't showing up to work, usually, things,
If you
work
show
isn't
up
getting done,
every
it's a
day,
real
you got even
problem.
more money.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, you have to pay them to show up.
Well, for unexcused or for health reasons
No
or
matter,
vacation? You got vacation.
no vacation. No employee of the school district gets paid vacation.
Oh, that's right, because you guys are in contract.
So, explain this again with the ADP. So the total amount with ADP, that's a wash from what we were doing before?
Yes.
Okay.
Between what we were paying in code and what we had in personnel costs, it's a wash.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other two, basically the net increase is $27,000 or $37,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, yes. And I haven't added those, so I increased, the first year in the budget, the retirement matching is actually, should be in the SLAs, actually. I mean, some of these slides are off the presses. So this really should be an SLA, because this has not been factored into the budget. This is a service level adjustment. So you'll see it a little bit in just a few more slides. I'll talk about service level adjustments. Well, that 26 is in the service level adjustment section. I'm not assuming that's approved yet. I haven't put that into the budget. These other two numbers are in the budget, because the second one I wasn't going to ask for approval, I just did it. And the top one, y'all already approved, I just forgot to, we forgot to add it in. We took out the cost, but we didn't add the ADP cost back in. So.
Well, I think it's good. The two things that we're increasing the amount on are encouraging longevity, that they're encouraging people to stay here. So I like that.
But again, I'm waiting, we'll talk about decisions in a minute and what that cost, and what it does to the budget and that kind of thing. But 26 really should have been in the SOA, and we'll get to that in a second. We also talk about inflation and their effects. I keep looking at Dyer because he's the one that encouraged us to do this, and I'm appreciative of it. We talked about that effect that it had on the budget. I talked about the fact that really the sales tax revenue alone is more than enough to take care of almost that entire effect. If every single line of them were hit by 8% inflation, we'd still be okay. But we know that that's not going to happen. That really it's a much smaller amount that would be subject to that inflation. And I feel like the sales tax revenue is going to cover that. And of course, worst come to worst, we'll curtail spending. I mean, if that really becomes that level of issue, of course, we've seen that in the past. When it wasn't too many years ago when cities were looking at furloughs and other things because of issues. So that's what would happen in our case too. One thing to consider, and we talked about this before, was the inflation's impact on capital planning. It drives up the cost of construction way more than it does the cost of goods at your local grocery store or even at the gas station. So obviously, we need to be thinking about that when we're looking at whether or not to do capital planning. This is the San Antonio area compared to the whole rest of the country. They are 83% of the average. So they're not 183%, it's 83% of the average. So not rising as much as other parts of the country, believe it or not, even though it is expensive to build in San Antonio. It's way, 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 way more expensive to build in New York, 132% there. There's some more impacts. I think we're just looking at geo debt and what's happening to it. It's rising. I am concerned that we're on the cusp of seeing some pretty serious inflation, and that means that your borrowing cost is going to increase as well. There's your yield movements for 2, 5, 10, and 30 years. When you're looking at those outer years where they're paying higher, you know that that's a general trend. It means that the inner years are also going to start coming up. So construction cost increases, exceeds the standard inflation. Cost of capital investment steadily increasing. Cost of borrowing forecasting increase. So what's the takeaway? It means we need to invest at ASAP. We need to be conservatively estimating our future capital expenditures. So that means if we think something's gonna, if we really think if we did it today, it'd be $2 million, but we know we aren't gonna do it for another 2 years, add 40%. I mean, that's a conservative estimate, right? It may sound like a lot, but geez, I mean, it's realistic. And you won't upset yourself and you won't upset your constituents if you do that. Utilize completion incentives and fixed cost contracts. When it comes time to actually issue the contract, you try to go about it, you really think about the impact of inflation and make sure that you've got some teeth into that contract, right? And some of that is the incentives and some of that's those fixed costs, right? So then we looked at the proposed utility funds. Really nothing's changed here. I am in the process of getting the cost of service study information back. We had an initial meeting after their initial results, which were based on the 2020 budget year. The next step is to give them all of our 2021 work, so that the stuff that you and I have been hashing out for the last 3 meetings, get that in their hands, and then to kind of sharpen their pencil a little bit more and get closer to where we are in utilities. But the budget itself really hasn't changed much from meeting to meeting. They were impacted a little bit by the ADP number, not much. A little bit by longevity and that kind of stuff. I hadn't showed you this look at it. This is one of the pictures that I'm going to include in the survey, which we're going to review in a minute. But it just shows you the expenditures by, or I'm sorry, the expenditures by major utility type or enterprise type.
Can you go back one slide? Or no, the one before that? That one. Electrical, why was it so high? Were we planning we had budgeted
What,
in
this
there?
year?
Yeah, for the current budget.
Yeah, because we have that, I believe that's because we have the River Bluff in there.
Okay, and so we're taking that out because we're hoping to turn that.
We're going to do that next year, yeah.
Yeah.
And we took out all, I remember the proposed budgets don't have any capital expenditure in it.
Right.
So that's a big reason why they look so much lower, is because there's no capital expenditure. But then I did show you the line items where, when we went through, I'm going to show it to you tonight, but I did show you the supplies, and where, even though that was a big reduction, it wasn't the only reduction. Actually, if you went by category, supplies or personnel, whatever the costs were, by and large, most of them did decrease. So they were cutting. Again, we're not realizing 100% of the savings just from capital. We're actually cutting the budget, and that was true in both the general fund and the other fund. So, have any of you had any troubles getting to the SharePoint and looking at what's out there? Because I've got everything from all the prior budget workshops. They're in a folder labeled by budget workshop. As soon as this one's concluded, I'll create another folder. It says budget workshop number 3. It'll have this slide deck in it. That way you all can go through and, one, check my math, but also compare the slides, refresh your memory on what we did and why. If you have anything you want to share with a constituent, you can do that from those folders. I don't think there's anything in there that's proprietary. It's all been shared publicly already. So it's a good place. I don't know if you're familiar with the snippet tool, but I use it very frequently. It's something that Microsoft includes on its web page, on its basic software. It's called Snippin something, but you go in and you can, anything you've got up on your screen, you can cut out and then put it in an email or send it. So if you're looking at a graph like this, or you're looking at a web page and you don't want to send the URL, you just want to show them this picture, you can cut out a piece and send it to them. It's very useful. Something I'd recommend doing is you go through that. If you've got constituents that have specific questions and you don't want to send them the entire PowerPoint because it's too big of a file, just snip a little picture from the pages you want to use and send it that way. So that's current versus proposed. We looked at that. These are the increases. Like I said, they were hit by ADP, a small amount. Of course, they have a small amount in longevity. Ad comp, that's where, that's depending on tonight. We went in and built it in the budget, but if the kiosk is approved, then that's about $70,000 or $7,000 a year in maintenance, and that would be picked up by the utility funds. And then this engineer, it's really supposed to be inspector, right? Or is that?
They want an additional cost, included the increase on the engineer side for electrical.
Okay, just to make sure we had enough. We're doing all the River Bluff and everything else. Okay. I didn't get a chance. I had that question the other night, and I didn't get a chance to follow up with you today. And then that retirement matching, again, that's an SLA. It hasn't actually been baked into the budgets. But the total amount is similar actually to the general fund when you add all that up. It's around 63. The general fund was around 66. So any questions, I'm sorry, any questions about that?
And on this one, the ADP would be a wash as well?
Yeah, the total ADP, what we were spending on personnel through the payroll amount, and I can go back and, well, I mean, it's in your packets, but when we did that ADP presentation, that hasn't changed. Like I said, the only mistake was I didn't include it in the budget. We approved it and then I didn't include it. Yeah, so that should have been a wash. These are the airport, nothing's changed there with the airport. Again, airport slight changes there because of ADP, longevity, and retirement matching. It's 4,300. I do want to point out when we get to the SLA discussion on retirement matching, this is the maximum amount. It's not, the employees don't get 2% right away. They have to put in 2% to get 2%. So, but when you're budgeting, you have to budget as if everybody participates. But realistically, we only have a handful participating today. So the total cost to us today would be, did you figure 5,000, 6,000? Yeah, it's a couple grand for current participation. Now, granted, once we offer it, we would encourage people to participate. But my experience as a financial advisor and in other cities, both, has been that generally people want to keep the money in their check and they don't think about long-term and make those investments. So it's more about attracting those higher level. And I think we did have a conversation about that I interviewed all those employees, and by and large, even when you offer it, if you just put it in the TMRS rate, you're spending a lot of money and not very many people even realize you're doing it. So there's your this hasn't changed from the last meeting, but that's your special revenue funds, your proposed budgets. Now, there were changes to some of those based on the prior slide, or no, based on this slide. So ADP again, it's $860. That's what the hotel portion of that cost would be. So if we were to continue to do this in-house, just be aware that this would be something that would be in what we call non-departmental. So that's where the other departments, the other funds, other than the general fund, the other funds pay for a portion of the administrative costs, whether it's finance or human resources or what have you. So that's what this is. So even though this says ADP, it could just as easily say general fund HR services, because that's really what it is. It's their portion of that service. All right, so now we're going to talk about service level adjustments. There's a couple that are new that I'm bringing to you tonight, just to think about. Again, we're not looking for a decision tonight. This is just things to consider. We spent a little bit of time at the last budget workshop talking about streets and drainage, and maybe could we possibly look at streets and drainage. We also talked about that 2% retirement match. We talked about the K-9 officer. I think that was brought up. So there's the chief is here prepared to talk about that tonight. We've talked a little bit about tourism, and I know our mayor has some more discussion in his report where he's going to address some of that. And where that tourism fund would be like, just like we did with the emergency preparedness fund, we're putting a couple of $1,000s over there. Would we want to do something like that for tourism, where we're actually specifically saying, hey, here's some money. We don't know what we're going to use it for yet, but we want to go ahead and budget it today to make sure that there's at least a line item for us to refer to when these things come up. And then additional streets and drainage personnel. So that's something else we talked about. I don't have a particular presentation on that. It's just, again, discussion. So I'd like to hit the asphalt zipper and the laser grader first, just to kind of explain what that looks like. So this is the machine. I think this is their 750. This is not what we would get. This is about a $450,000 machine.
That's the correct.
Oh, this is it?
Yeah, this is the
I'm just kidding. It looks like the giant one. Sorry. This is the one we would get. It's the right size. Okay. It just looks huge.
And then just basically harvest asphalt off of current streets.
Well, it blends it in place.
Oh,
That's what I like about this. This is something that actually it reclaims. Thank you. My brain was shot today. It reclaims all that stuff, and you can add like cement, liquid or dry. You can add other liquids like earth block and all these other branded liquid stuff to the dirt as you're mixing it up. You can make several passes, and at the end of the day, once you roll it, you can end up with water and roll it, you can end up with a really hard surface. Now, I still recommend putting emulsified, like tar, a sealant, and then chip sealing it to really get the life out of the street. But truthfully, you could finish that process and have a drivable surface in a matter of hours from start to finish, for the areas that you're able to do. So this wouldn't do the full width of the street. This is, well, let's just get through here. So what's it good for? Patches, blocks. You can just do smaller areas, block by block. It actually is a great patching tool. You end up with a much better patch than you would anywhere else. You're not actually, you're not dumping a bunch of rock into the hole. You're actually fixing it from the base up. And granted, you're doing more than just that little hole. You're going to do the area around it too. It's the width of the machine. But again, once you're done, that part of the street will probably be stronger than the areas around it. Again, you do it block by block. You can do full roads. This kind of walks you through what that basic installation looks like. This is a really complicated sheet, but basically what it's telling you is you can save quite a bit of money doing some of this stuff in-house rather than contracting it out. And that's just looking at, the traditional method versus using something like this. I have used this in other places where I've worked. I find it to be very helpful if it's used. There's some, there's certainly lots of examples of cities who've bought a whiz-bang something, and then for whatever reason, either the staff didn't like it or whatever, it sits and rusts, and it's just money goes down too. But we use the crud out of this thing in some of the cities I've worked in the past, and it's great. Especially when you have streets like ours that they're actually, the base isn't too terrible, and you can, what you've got down that you need to reclaim is actually pretty good material to work with, so then you can create a really solid base from that, from the stuff that's falling apart right now. And then put rock over the top of it. So one of the things that we're kind of, with this particular proposal, there's another addition, which is there's the asphalt zipper, but then there's also the laser grader. The asphalt zipper to purchase, what was the total purchase price? 108? 190,000 to buy it if we bought it. I'm not recommending that right off the bat. There is a lease option. The lease option was 40 grand a year? Yeah, 42,000 a year. There's a laser laser grader attachment that can go on a Bobcat. It's like 17 grand. These two pieces of equipment, Devin's been doing some research on, would allow the staff that we have, the 3 people that we have in the streets, to go and do streets projects and do quite a bit on their own, and in some cases leave the street more or less finished. We might have to have, again, emulsification put on top of it, get a contractor to do that part, or we can rent that machine and do it ourselves. We probably would want to chip seal them, but you wouldn't have to do, that's not something you'd have to do right away. You could wait until you have a number of streets, a number of miles, take it out to bid and get it chip sealed, as opposed to having a contractor come and do all that work. But the real kind of presentation isn't, well, do you want to buy one or not? It's really, what do y'all think about kind of this approach to streets management versus what we've done in the past? What we've been doing is paying a contractor doing it and paying it, cash funding this, and having contractors come and do small amounts. Later tonight, we're going to look at a bid opening during the regular council meeting. That bid, we've got a letter from our engineer. We're recommending to reject that bid, we're recommending to reject the bid and start over, basically, for several reasons. But that was $290,000 to do what was a pretty small list of projects. So when you think about just that one, project more than pays for it, if you wanted to go buy this machine, which is not what I'm asking you, but we spend a lot having contracted work done. Now, one of the things we're also going to look at is renting. Talked to Councilman King earlier today, and he was recommending just look at what it would cost to rent this type of machine. So we'll look into that. We'll also certainly talk to other cities. Hondo bought the very large version of this, the 750. We don't have anything that's big enough to push that thing. They probably do, but I'd have to look and see, well, one, can we operate it? And then two, are they willing to let us operate it or rent it? Or do they want to sell it to us for a discount? I'm not above doing that if we can get it for a real good deal, but.
Or hire it out.
Or hire it out, what can we do with that piece of machine? I know these zippers aren't for rent, like you can't rent that particular machine, but you can rent other machines that do similar work. And they come in, really big models that are millions of dollars, and then in smaller models that are, you can rent.
Devin, you guys repaved this parking lot out front, and that took days. I mean, they're at it for, and I imagine that this.
This piece of equipment, I mean, we could have done all the groundwork and mixed in the emulsion and stuff, and been rolling within an hour, less. I mean, actually, it's.
That's pretty amazing. It really is. I mean, it's because the process you used has been around for decades, and to be able to cut that man hours and processing time down to hours is incredible.
Yeah, I watched them doing that. It took quite a while.
Yeah.
So with our resident expert here, Councilman King, I know that you guys had a chance to talk it over. Can you give us your thoughts on this? Your thoughts and professional opinion?
I think we need to be really careful with this because just buying the equipment, we don't have the expertise to do it. And we, like the parking lot out front, you can tell that's not a real professional job. I mean, let's face it. And I realize it was kind of a practice thing for you all. But again, with Hondo, they bought this equipment and it's sitting there. And so I think we need to do our homework on this. Instead of buying this machine, I would rent on a monthly basis a self-propelled, they call these things mags or pulverizers. And instead of buying this thing, you can go rent for a week or a month or whatever, self-propelled pulverizing machines that go around, and you dial it down. You want to go down 1 inch, 6 inches, 8 inches. Typically, you would go, at least 6 inches for our little residential streets, and then come in there and put in a chip seal on top of it. I think we could get to where we have the expertise to do that, but contractors are doing this day in and day out, and it's not something you can just do because you bought a piece of equipment. You really do need the expertise of the people, which I don't think we have. But I can see this as being an option in the future. I think we just have to be very, very careful. And again, I talked to Scott. He's going to talk to Hondo and talk to Larry Sittler and talk to others so we can kind of have a little bit better. But I don't think we're ready to make a commitment on this budget cycle. Personally.
Well, I definitely respect that opinion. The two things that I would be most concerned with is how well does it work, and the expertise speaks to that as well. That's a piece of that. And then second, and Scott, you mentioned this, if we have this expensive piece of equipment that is going to replace part of our budget, I want to make sure that thing is operating like full time. So maybe that's something that we look at stepping into with the rental option, lease option, talking to Hondo. And I think that the longer term vision would be, let's get that expertise. Once we get to a place where we can use that in the budget, then hire somebody that has experience with it, that can run it full time, or develop that experience in-house.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I'm assuming it takes several, I could see to do an operation, minimum 3 people. But like you have 3 people in the streets now. Well, while you're doing this,
Who's doing drainage?
what's going to happen, with everything these guys, because I'm assuming they're staying busy now. So does that mean we now need to go hire 3 more people whenever we're using this? Because now we have this full-time equipment on staff.
I've spoken to
So, yeah.
other cities, and they provide an 8-hour course, and as long as you have a heavy equipment operator, which we do, they state it's as simple as getting it on and having it. It's actually easier than a normal backhoe. It's pretty much you set the level and you go.
Oh, no, I know this.
Requires 2 people. And,
But now you're coming in with the compactors, and you're coming in with the graders, and so all of these, just milling the machine is easy. That's the easiest part. I could run one of those machines in with 1 hour instructions, but then it's the compacting and the grading and all of this. But then again, as you're doing this with all your people, and you're buying this equipment, so that means really you need to operate it pretty much full time, so then now it's, where are you gonna get the employees to do that? You're gonna have to go out and hire more employees, right? Or you plan to just use your 3 people?
One square block can be completed in a day.
Well, let me pause this. So what I would like to know is, are y'all, because we're going to have another meeting in August. It won't be a budget workshop, but we can address service level adjustments at that meeting. Some of the things, because again, I'm not going to pressure you to make any decisions tonight. I just want to know, what information would you like to have back? Is it worth bringing back and talking about some more? If you've got more questions, we can do that. We can certainly do that. So I know, because Phil and I have talked, I know some of the questions he has, so I'm prepared to kind of get those answers. But is this of interest? Do y'all want to pursue this, or do we want to continue to just look at contracting out this work? And I honestly, you maybe need more information. Well, we aren't even ready to make that decision. Bring us some more information.
Yeah, from a budgetary standpoint, I'd say it's going to come down to the bottom line. I mean, what's it going to cost us to hire somebody to do the same job, and compared to the operation and either rental or purchase of this? So.
We'll definitely be able to provide you some side-by-side comparisons on cost, but I think Phil brings up some great points, which is, well, are you going to hire another person? What are you going to do with your people? How often are you going to use this machine? And realistically, we wouldn't use it 24 hours a day. We wouldn't use it every day of the week. We're going to need to do drainage and mowing and other things, but having this equipment there would allow us to prep and do things.
And I see
like,
that it allows you to address those issues today instead of a month from today. So that's another plus I see. So.
Well, and you're just getting a better quality product at the end of the day. Like I'm thinking back to potholes. Now, our pothole repair process has improved greatly. But anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I'm not in favor of buying the machine outright. I think we should, if we're going to do this, we should lease the machines, and I think we should plan to hire part-time people when we use the machines most of the time, because I don't think you can do this with 3 people and get the rest of their job done too. So I'd much rather try it as a rental or a lease and see how it works and see if we're getting what we think we're going to get before we commit to buying.
Anything else? Councilwoman Martinez?
I agree with her. We need to test drive it pretty much before we even fork out the money. And also, with the part-time people, if we go that route, we still got to fork out the money to train them and everything. And then what's the states and federal requirement as far as the current training and everything like that, and OSHA, and what have you, all those costs that need to be looked at as well.
Councilman Short?
I'd like to see us maybe rent it before we buy it. I mean, just to see how good of a job we can do with it. Maybe, you said Hondo has one?
Well, they have a much larger unit,
Yeah.
and I just have to look at that and see. I need to go have a conversation with Mr. Scott, Alan Scott, and see, one, are they willing to share it basically through an ILA or something else, and what would that look like? I know we don't have the equipment to haul that thing or to push it. We'd have to have all that equipment loaned to us basically, but we could rent some of it too. We could rent the hauling piece if they're allowing to, and we could probably rent even the backhoe or the front end loader. So we can look at, that's what I think we'll do is evaluate those costs.
We can go watch them use it.
I will. That's
If they
one of the
use it.
issues. I don't think they've been using it. I think they had
that's
a lot of-
nuts.
We don't want to be that.
Right.
So I think that what we're getting at across the board is, right now it sounds like a good idea, but what we want is a good plan. So let's get this fully baked out, make sure that we understand exactly what we're getting into. We know exactly how we're going to deal with the personnel, validate that it works to the way that we expect. I think that we all support having better streets, and whatever we can do to maximize the effectiveness to make the dollars go further, I think that's perfect.
So it's not dead.
No, again, we just talked, this is born out of that conversation about we want to add people, we want to try to do stuff in-house, we want to have a true streets program. And this was kind of, this still isn't, you know, again, if you look at the county and the amount of money they've invested in equipment and people, it's enormous, right? And they have a lot more roads to manage than we do, so we aren't going to try to compete with them. And that was the thing, is we recognized that as staff, that's probably not the direction that we would advise you to go. It's certainly a lot bigger investment. We saw this as a smaller step that would allow us to do quite a bit of the work, not all of it, but 75–80% of the work in-house. And it wouldn't cost us $1.5 million for a maintainer. It would be, you know, in a much more reasonable route. All right, well, if we only have like 4 minutes before the 5 o'clock time for the next meeting. I wanted to just get feedback from you on these other options. You have a packet. Do you have the K-9 packet?
Yes.
All right, you have the K-9 packet. The purpose of providing that was just to refresh your memory of what the cost was to have a K-9 officer. The chief has some thoughts on that. This is your list, not mine, really. So any order you want to talk about this, Mayor, I mean, if you want to take an up-down vote on them and decide which one you really want to focus on with 3 minutes, but.
I really think with everything that's going on nowadays and with the 90 corridor being a hotbed for illegal immigrants, the drugs coming in from Mexico and everything, I really, really believe we need another K-9. It was instrumental when we had it. Unfortunately, we lost the handler. So, I mean, I really believe that this is something we need to get going again.
I'll second that.
I think it's a luxury we are just too small to have. I would rather have another police officer. And I mean, you think, last time everything was donated to us, and then we still had to, upgrade the vehicles and everything, upgrade the vehicle, and it got expensive, and like I say, the handler left. The dogs are short-term, life. It's great to have it, but I don't know if we need it to protect our people here. But I'd much rather have another officer because we're growing, and we're going to grow very quickly here in the next year. And I don't think the K-9 is going to replace the other police officer that we're going to do.
Councilman Sherritt?
Well, I think we need to stew on this a little bit, but I could support a K-9 program at this point. It looks like you got some stuff attached to this program as far as funding. Looks pretty interesting. Looks like it may help us out here. Does anybody know what the total cost of something like this would be?
Close to 100,000.
100K.
Per year?
You're looking at it 44,000 for a vehicle retrofitted for K-9. The cost of the officer, like Councilman King said, last time Red McCombs purchased a dog for us. That was $12,000–$13,000 for the animal. Then it was another $2,500 to have the officer trained. The animal was already trained by the people we've purchased it from. And then you also have reoccurring costs after your officer's out there. He needs to do between 16 and 20 hours a week of additional training with that animal to keep it up and good to go. The problem with Castroville is you don't have a full-time K-9, and that's all he does, and that's what keeps those dogs good and sharp and doing what they're supposed to be doing out there. If they're trying to do patrol and take calls and do the K-9 thing, the dog goes bad after a couple of years. He quits on you. And I've seen that 3 times now. This last one we had, Matt was probably the best K-9 officer we had, and he worked hard at it, but his dog towards the end there was losing interest because he wasn't getting enough time out there searching vehicles and stuff. Down the road, yes, I'd like to have this in place. I agree with Councilman King. Right now, I'd rather have another officer than a K-9. It would be more beneficial to the city. We are participating in the Border Garden Grant Program starting in February, where the Border Patrol is paying us to go out there and do nothing but drug interdiction. If we get that off the ground and get it going and the guys get going, that'd be a perfect time to get a K-9 started because we could use it on a regular basis. And they may even pay for a vehicle for us, so it'd be a lot cheaper. But it's going to cost a lot more to do K-9. We just got lucky. The stars fell in the right place the first time we did it.
All right. Councilman Dyer?
I'm opposed to the K-9 program. I think we need more police officers. When we get bigger, I agree with you. That's something we should look at, but not now.
Right.
But I think that if the chief comes to us and says, this is the definite benefit of it, and I would support it. If you're saying that we don't need it, then I would love to have more traffic officers if we increase anything to deal with some of the traffic issues that we've been having. So, okay.
I thought that's what this was, and
Yeah.
and if you don't feel like that's,
15 proposal, and you can see the difference in prices compared to what I'm telling you now.
Right.
We got very lucky when we did that. Everything just kind of fell into place.
yeah. Okay. Well,
right.
take your recommendation to heart.
Thank you,
Very
Chief.
much so.
So I think that if we go through all of these, as we looked at the asphalt zipper, the laser grader attachment, so the street, and that falls with the last item, personnel, equipment to do the streets, I think that we would support that as long as we've got a good solid plan to do that. Again, the people, I hear constantly, streets are a big thing. We have many areas that could use improvement with that. So I think we just need to come back with a solid plan on that.
Well, and I want to be clear also that I want y'all to utilize this opportunity to think about, I mean, this is the list I've kind of trying to listen to y'all and pare it back. But if there's anything else that's what you consider a service level adjustment, new equipment, something different than what we're doing today, new personnel, additional personnel some other place, a barista at the city hall. I don't know.
I don't know if this time, but we found out that we can put 2 signs out additional to these, welcome to Castroville, which Arnie's working on. But as you go into a town and it says Castroville, you're entering Castroville Historic District. You see these, they're the brown signs, they're 4x8, they're outside the city. San Jose Mission, next right. You've seen these. There are these, we can get those left and right of town as we enter into town.
Those are from TxDOT, so.
Well, we have to pay for them.
Yeah,
But yes, they are approved, they are allowed, be about $10,000 a piece. I think that would be kind of a really neat sign as far as an introduction. It would help with tourism. People say, oh, it's a historic town, let's stop and look at it. But basically entering Castroville Historic District, that's simple. And it would make us, it's like, like you say, it's a TxDOT sign. It's not us saying, hey, welcome to our town.
They don't have any restrictions on putting it in the right of way either, so.
Correct, because Arnie's been researching this and found out that there is a classification of a particular sign that they will allow that. We have to pay for it, but they will allow it. And it doesn't, and it goes into their right of way.
Is that a brick sign? What does that look like? Is that a base and plants and?
No, you know
lights
what does it
and-
look like?
Yeah.
It basically 2 steel poles, a brown sign with a yellow border, yellow lettering on it. And you'll see these entering some historic district, entering San Jose Mission, going into downtown
That's
San Antonio.
$10,000 to have a metal sign?
Each one's about $10,000. Well, without the post, about $8,000 to get them printed up. And then that's through, Arnie's not out there, is he?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hiding in the back.
That was about $8,000, he estimated, plus the post.
Yes. In fact, I just, a few minutes ago, talked to the person who runs the Independence Trail for the Texas Historical Commission, and they're going to take some pictures of signs that are in that area, which stretches from San Antonio to San Jacinto, and get them to me in the next few days. But Dale Pizza that was here yesterday, the one who oversees all that related stuff.
So to me, for the $20,000, that would really benefit our tourism, I think.
Okay.
But that's something for consideration.
Anybody else?
On tourism? No.
Well, he's talking about service level adjustments.
Yeah,
And this is kind of across the board.
The last item I'd like to chat about for a moment is
The additional streets and drainage personnel?
it relates to what we've been saying on streets. I really believe we need to make the street department bigger. And I think we need to try to do more things. Once we make the department bigger, we need to put O&M money in there to pay for them. And I think they can do a lot of things to help us with some very difficult problems, like drainage. You already have done a lot of work over there on Constantinople and those other streets. And I read the 2002 study very carefully, and you know, what they're recommending and what they recommended to us way back in 2002 for our drainage problems is to do the lowest cost solution, culverts and box drains, instead of digging up and putting sewer lines or storm drainage lines under the road for millions and millions of dollars. And a lot of that kind of stuff a street department could do with the equipment we already have. We just need to have money, pay for the material and the hours. So I really support the idea of SLAs in the street department. I still believe, though, the best bang for our buck is going to be outsourcing for contractors to do streets.
So I think, again, across the board with streets, we definitely know that they need work, and so I think that if there's any kind of SLAs across the board, I think that it is with the streets. Is there any, and what, Councilman King?
Any other thoughts about the 2% retirement action? I think we need to finish on that.
To me, that's a no-brainer.
I would agree, thank you. That would be
Me
good.
too.
Yeah.
It goes to our personnel retention efforts. I think
So
that's
we'll show
positive.
you at the next meeting what that budget looks like. I'm gonna bring back something for the signs, but I'm just gonna tell you, between now and September, there's no need to adjust next year's budget. We have plenty of fund balance coming back to us this year that we're projecting. And I would suggest maybe in this budget year, you allocate for the signage if it can be spent in this budget. If not, then we'll adjust next. We'll see I need to see what the timeframe is.
Right. I think we need to close this one out and continue the conversation. So we are going to have to do the vision, mission, values another time.
Yes.
So we're going to adjourn this meeting at 5:07.
I need to close this out and start.
All right. So for those of you who just came in, we were just finishing up a budget work session, and we're going to start the